first hit the hip hop scene in America, then you moved to Hong Kong. You've done a lot since then we're going to get into, but what's next for you? What are you up to now?
Well, all my focus right now is on this upcoming album called 1459, and that releases in October, October 21st. I just found out the other day that is the exact date of release, so really excited about it. I do think it's a project that is 32 years in the making, and what I mean by that is, you know, I'm 32 this year, and the reason I say it feels like it's been 32 years in the making is because I feel like of the several projects that I've released in the last decade, I mean, even that alone blows my mind. To be able to say I've been doing this music thing for a decade. I do feel 1459 is the most focused and conceptually, you know, inspired album. And what is the inspiration? My life, right? So 1459 represents, specifically, I'm trying to say, what do you do with your last second of your 15 minutes of fame? Hence the 1459. So I'm looking at the clock. It says 14 minutes, 59 seconds, 1 second left. What now, Jin? And you know, I mean, obviously I can go on forever about the experience of these last 10 years being a recording artist. But then even further on, just my life in general, meaning at 12 years old, knowing that this is what I wanted to do. So all the focus is on this project right now.
Cool. Is the name positive or negative, the 15 minutes of fame?
I didn't think too much about the positive or the negative element of it when I first was inspired. But interestingly enough, as the creative process started unfolding, as I'm exploring the themes and exploring the ideas for the actual songs, I came to find out that exactly like how you mentioned, you can react in several ways, right? So the two that popped into my mind right away were like, well, someone could either say, man, can't believe my 15 minutes is almost up. What a bummer, right? Or you can actually say, wow, I can't believe I had 15 minutes. And you're telling me this is my last second? I'm going out with a bang, right? So those two things alone were pretty insightful for me. And then as I started working through the project, I think I leaned more towards, you know what, this is not a pity party. This is not, you know, me being sad and depressed. On the contrary, this is me celebrating. So within the context of this album in 1459, I think the defining message that I want to convey is to the listener and to the general public is beyond just the 15 minutes of fame, but more so life as a whole. I think we always overlook the precious seconds. Because when we think in the context of time, we think, okay, well, I got 10 years to do this. I got 5 years, 5 months, 5 days. But you never really focus on the seconds. But if you actually take a moment to process it, everything can change in a split second, you know, like the saying even goes. So rather than me looking at it from a depressed, and it's not even about living every day like, oh man, I don't know what's going to happen when I walk out this building and be all sad. It's actually, like I said, the contrary. Like, wow, I don't know what's going to happen. So let me maximize on every single moment, like every conversation, every handshake, every hug, every dinner that I have with my wife, every time I get to roll on the carpet with my son. I could go on, the list goes on forever. But every single opportunity, let me make sure that it is cherished and maximized on.
Yeah, fantastic. And so your newest track's called Every Day's Chinese New Year. It seems like you're putting the culture into your music more.
The fun thing about this single, Chinese New Year, that's the name of the song, and you know the main line in there is Every Day is Chinese New Year, is that to me the most important thing is it came from a very organic place. So even in the sense of if it comes across to someone like, well, yeah, you're very vocal and very intentional about incorporating your heritage and your culture into the song and into this music, I'm glad that it comes across as that. However, to me, the most important thing is that it's done organically. Because I've had experiences in the past, actually for those that do know my history and you know are familiar with it, I released my first album 10 years ago, in 2004. And this is all unplanned too. So it's not like, oh, Jin's back with a 10-year anniversary album. No, it just so happens that the course of my journey has brought me to here. But my first album was 10 years ago, and the first song that I ever released actually was a song called Learn Chinese. And I'll be the first to tell you, artistically, Learn Chinese was crap. Can I say crap here? I can say crap, right? I mean, it's not profanity. Okay, yeah. Look, to me, I personally think Learn Chinese was crap. And that is not a that's not a negative statement towards the people involved. So my record label at the time was this huge, very well-known label by the name of Rough Riders, right? So thanks to them for giving me an opportunity. An individual that was involved, Wyclef, you know, someone I grew up listening to, still very active in the music scene, and even that experience in the song, it didn't tamper with my perception and admiration of Wyclef. But the song itself, I'll be the first one to bear the responsibility. And when I use the word crap, I think I can specify a bit more what I mean by it. I think the intentions were great, right? Like, I was like, yeah, I want to do a song that is, as we mentioned earlier, that is paying homage and acknowledging my culture and my ethnicity. I think the intentions were great, but the execution was where the miscalculations were. And if you say, well, what was it? What was the missing ingredient that leads you to say you think it's crap, Jin? Is authenticity. I mean, even if you listen to the song, or more importantly, we shot like a music video for it. In the music video, I'm like doing karate kicks and sliding on the floor and fighting villains. And I understand the entertainment value of it. But I just look back now, right, 10 years later, and I'm like, man, Jin, you had an opportunity to really make a statement, and this was the statement you wanted to make, right? So hindsight is always 20/20. And the really cool thing, I guess, is here we are 10 years later. I feel like that had to happen for me to arrive where I'm at now. So Learn Chinese almost was like, I don't want to say it was experimental, because, you know, we were very conscious, well, I was conscious of what was happening. So that's the thing too. Sometimes people are like, man, why did you let them do that? Why'd you let them pick that as your first song? Why'd you let them shoot the video like that? You know, did they force you? Like, were you like, you know, did they say you had to do it? And I'm the first one to say no. I mean, I was conscious of every decision. I mean, I was like early 20s, so I was just excited to be there and be a part of it. So I was like, yeah, let's do it. Learn Chinese, why not, right? But to me, Chinese New Year is kind of like a, I don't want to say it's like a comeback. It is kind of like a re-inspired and reinvigorated version of Learn Chinese.
Well, but that huge market they were talking about in China and in Asia, is that something you tapped into later with the Cantonese album and awesome. You know, found a lot of success?
Yeah, I mean, the circumstances that brought me to Asia later on was interesting. I mean, it does seem like something scripted, and it does seem like fairy tale-ish, because it was so just like out of nowhere. As for me, you know, it came out of nowhere. Here you have, you know, me who, I recorded an album, right? I very intentionally recorded an album all in Cantonese in 2006. So this is after I parted ways with, you know, my original record label that I signed with. And to be honest, things were at a standstill. Like, it definitely wasn't as productive as it was prior to that. So 2006, here you go, I record this Cantonese album. I don't want to say out of desperation, but it was definitely out of a place of, well, there's nothing else left to do or try, so let's give it a shot, right? So here we have this finished album, all in Cantonese. I'm pretty excited about it, because I'm like, wow, I could actually rap in Cantonese, right? So we send it to Hong Kong, because naturally we're thinking, well, the story and the root of this album, what I'm trying to say is, you know, my family's from Hong Kong. They immigrated to the US. I was born and raised here, which makes me a ABC, right? And that's the story of it. So what better place to launch it than in Hong Kong? We send it to every single label possible in Hong Kong. Nobody's interested. I mean, they express interest. Hey, keep in touch. Keep in touch means no thank you, pretty much. A nice way of saying no thank you. So we pretty much accept that, and we just leave it be. Fast forward 2 years after that, 2008, one of these labels that we reached out to, out of the blue, they expressed interest. Hey, remember that album that Jin shared with us, the ABC thing? Does he want to come to Hong Kong and release that? And we're like, what the heck? That was like 2 years ago. Don't they know that, you know, it's kind of dated? And they're like, oh, it's cool. We'll release it and repackage it and, you know, put a new song on there, but we just need Jin to come to Hong Kong. Now, mind you, when they reached out about this in 2008, I was borderline ready to go to Starbucks and see if they were hiring. And I only say Starbucks because I love Starbucks. So that's not belittling Starbucks by any means, right? So, meaning I was at a point where, you know, I don't know how much longer I can hang on to this rapper dream, right? So when we get the call, I speak to my manager, you know, and great friend, and I'm like, Carl, by the name of Carl. And he's like, listen, it's up to you, Jin. You know, there's no telling what will happen. You know, maybe you can go out there and try just for a couple months. And that's exactly the circumstances that I went out there under. But those 3 months turned into 6, and then turned into a year, and then turned into 4 years ultimately. Now, I think what blew my mind was what occurred in those 4 years. So on the heels of that first album, I end up releasing 2 more albums. I do TV, I'm doing film, I'm doing all type of stuff. I'm like Ryan Seacrest / I don't know, who's the guy on CSI? Oh, I mean, they're always changing actors. But what I mean is, like, I'm doing TV dramas, I'm hosting stuff, I'm endorsing stuff, and the most important thing whenever I share about this is actually the final point, which is I do believe something occurred out there that was beyond me. Like, all of that was not my doing. Like, it wasn't because of my looks or talent or anything special. I mean, another thing that occurred while I was in Hong Kong was coming to my faith. And I think a big part of it was, you know, God was just opening all these doors. And did I work hard and bust my butt? Absolutely. But you have to understand, from my perspective, it couldn't have been anything other than something divine, like kind of overseeing and opening these doors and showing me grace and favor. Because for real, like, there's just no way. Here I am, completely new, and I'm getting put into these TV dramas where prior to that, there's like lines of people that are way more talented, way more deserving of it, that are, you know, still waiting for their shot. But here you go, okay, yeah, let's put Jin in this one. Let's let Jin host this. Let's let Jin host TRL. Let's let Jin host a nighttime show. Let's put him in this commercial. And, you know, maybe, I mean, if I say something that I was very intentional about. I was definitely very grateful for these opportunities, right? And I made the most of them. So maybe that resonated with these people that I was working with. But at the end of the day, I know for a fact that it was definitely something beyond me that was allowing me to sustain and develop and grow in that way.
Now, being there, coming back here, what was the most challenging aspect of switching between the 2 demographics, America and Asia?
Well, an interesting thing that happened while I was in Hong Kong is, other than the faith aspect, it was definitely a lot of like self-discovery and self-growth in terms of that identity, right? The identity of, here you have, I was born and raised in the States, but my family is from Hong Kong. So do I have an emotional connection and attachment to Hong Kong and China and Asia? Absolutely. But mind you, I go out there and the initial days and the initial stages were tough because I was being looked at as an outsider. So there was this fascination of, yeah, that's that guy from America. He was doing the rap battles and he signed with the labels and all that. But there was also this feeling of, he's not one of us though, right? To the more severe cases where they were actually kind of like criticizing about it, you know, like, oh, he doesn't know how to read Chinese, you know, he probably can't even speak Chinese well or Cantonese well. And these were things that I was working with, you know, in regards to your question of what was that transition of going out there and then coming back. I think the beauty, though, is at some point in Hong Kong, I came to I guess you can say it was an epiphany. It was like, you know what? Why do you feel the need to answer to these people, Jin? So it's not a rude type of, who cares about what they say? But I think for me, the answer that I was looking for throughout the whole time of, man, am I more? Because this is the question I would always get asked. So do you think of yourself more as Chinese or American? Which one are you? And there was always this pressure to kind of like pledge my allegiance to one in particular. So I think the epiphany I had was one day I just woke up, or not one day, but gradually I came to this realization that, man, as long as I look in the mirror and I'm like, are you comfortable with who you are and what you're saying and how you carry yourself? If you are, then that's all that matters, right? So I was able to leave Hong Kong with that kind of closure, and I think it totally relates to my music too, because here you have, I'm in Hong Kong and the majority of the stuff that I'm doing is in Cantonese. I'm getting resistance too, because they're like, yo, Jin, man, just rap in English, man, because this Cantonese stuff ain't for you. But it was this tug of war type of thing, because at the same time, people are like, man, we love your Cantonese stuff, Jin, because when you do the English rap, it's cool, but we don't even know what you're talking about, right? But whereas when you rap in Cantonese, we can understand you. So then I come back to the States, and now all of a sudden, the people that do appreciate my Cantonese stuff, they're like, yo, Jin, when you gonna rap in Cantonese again? And I'm just like, this goes with what I was saying, is at the end of the day, if I can find peace, whether I'm recording and creating in Cantonese or English, that's the most important thing. Because if I let it become a matter of trying to please this guy or this party and please this section and this demographic, I'll go crazy. I'm on the brink of going crazy anyways already, so something like that would probably just push me completely over the edge. So I think it's a good thing though, meaning to be able to find that type of peace and clarity.
Someone else wants to make a brand like you and
Yeah.
be famous, both sides of the globe. Really, there's no set path, you're saying. really advice you give them to try and use both? It's about language.
Well, I think for me, I love the way you just said, like, for someone who wants to be famous, right? So I think for me, a big revelation I had in Hong Kong is not really the fame chasing guy, or not that I once used to be. So to me right now, it's like, this actually is a big part of the 1459 album and its inspiration, right? Here I'm talking about the premise of 15 minutes being over. Like I said, once upon a time, I may be salvaging onto that fame as much as I can, whereas with 1459, there is kind of like there is a feeling of saying, yo, if you're telling me my 15 minutes is up, great, so be it, you know what I mean? And it's not saying I don't care, but it's almost saying, man, I'm not dependent on that for worth or purpose. Whereas once upon a time, I very much was. So in regards to your question, my suggestion to the young people that are watching and do have that mentality of, wanting to explore, building a career of this sort where you can kind of be there and be here and have reach in both. I mean, I can only speak from my own experience, is that this reach that we're talking about, it wasn't even something that I created or built. It kind of is just the circumstance and the nature of I guess, my journey and my path and who I am. And it's allowed me to do that. But right now, to me, whether it be in the context of the album or just in general in every facet, my thing is authenticity above all else. Meaning, for people that do, have the vision of, man, I would love to be able to, let's say it is a young Asian American, right? And they're like, oh, I want to be able to have a career that can span in the US or even, in Asia or beyond, right? I think in this day and age, everybody's mentality is they just want to be global, right? And understandably, I couldn't imagine someone saying, you know what, I just want to be known and appreciated for my music in my small town of whatever. You want to have as much reach as possible. To me, the key to that is just authenticity, right? I mean, I think whether it's in any language, in any region, what's authentic kind of is the most, like, it's not a guaranteed formula for success. But to me, if you're able to maintain an authenticity, there's a success in that already because, at least at the end of the day, whatever the outcome of your product or your brand or whatever, you can look back at the process and look amongst yourself and your colleagues and your team and you'd be like, yo, did we keep it authentic the whole way? We did? Cool. Because beyond that, everything else is beyond your control anyways.
Entertainment media in the future, what do you think of artists like Psy and doing so well? Do you feel like it's really a global landscape now in entertainment and it's changing?
Well, I think with Psy specifically, right? I mean, who wasn't doing the Gangnam Style dance? I mean, I must have did it like 10 times a day myself, right? I think everybody kind of has their own assessment as to what that was. Some people are like, well, that was just kind of like one of those, lightning in a bottle type of situations. I do think that it wasn't accidental, meaning the way, how he grew and became big. I mean, from the production and the way that he, he created that video and the music. I mean, beyond Psy himself, I'm sure it was a team of absolute masterminds. Now, obviously, the things you can't control is if something does go viral or doesn't go viral, right? But even in that sense, going viral to what capacity, you can't control either. I mean, I think it was a combination of the viral factor, but then also, I mean, the song is fun. I mean, like, whenever you can make music, like, nobody knows what the heck he's singing about, unless you speak Korean, right? But that just goes to show you that if something resonates and hits someone, then that can transcend everything. Transcends language, especially music in this case. But beyond the scope of Psy, I think in general, yeah, I would like to think that as time progresses, there will be more and more of these cases where the music just kind of becomes non-regional. So you can have like, I mean, it happens now where you have American artists, so to speak, right? Artists that are rooted in the US, based in the US, from the US, but they'll go to like Australia and become huge megastars, right? And that's actually already the norm, right? Meaning like you look at like the Beyoncés and the Kanyes and the Jay-Z's of the world. I mean, if you go outside of America, they're huge, right? So I think hopefully, and what is happening is these artists from the regions outside of the States come to the States or beyond wherever they're from and kind of get traction and build too. And I think at the end of the day, that goes back to the main thing I've been talking about for most of this time, I guess, is that authenticity, right? When you have an artist who's from, hypothetically, the Philippines, right? I don't, that just crossed my mind. But whether it be a rapper, a soul singer, or whatever genre, right? If their music and their talent and their craft speaks for itself, it will reach where it needs to reach, right? And it'll reach the States, it'll reach London. And the fact that that person is from the Philippines just happens to be that's just a fact, right? But it won't define that person, because it'll be the music or the art or whatever it is that this person is sharing with the world. That'll be the thing that speaks for, you know, that person. The whole music industry and as it pertains to the arts, right now already is in a place that it's never been. And there's obviously always, you know, pros and cons to everything. So with the internet becoming, I mean, the internet now is the main platform for everything, whether it's music, film, daily information, right? I mean, it's everything. It's the new platform for everything. But as it pertains specifically to music, I think the gift and the curse is that whereas it is a very quick thing, right away, I have a new song, Chinese New Year. I can blast it out to all the blogs and it reaches everybody. And that's kind of like, you would think it's a good thing, but the negative is that it also makes the overall experience a little less, I'm trying to think of the word. It takes away from the experience. And I'm just speaking as, this is like the old, this is my age coming out and revealing itself. Whereas once upon a time, there was an excitement when you heard a song on the radio. You know, you would call your friends, yo, did you just hear that new, LL Cool J song? And then the next thing you do is you try to go buy a cassette tape and put it in and record it and catch it, right? That was, for me, that was part of the experience, right? And you couldn't just Google it and find it right away. And this is an extreme way of describing it, but it does depreciate the value of the art a little bit, you know, because people are just so quick to consume it. And there's so much of it too. So you consume it, and then the next, you know, you're listening to this on Vine, and then in the next second on Instagram, it's something else that's already. And so it's like, it's just the reality of life though. And it happens with everything. So you gotta accept it. And I do think a big part of it is evolving with it as well. Right, I get emails, I get tweets, I get YouTube messages all the time about this, which is, yo, Jin, you know, I do music. Do you have any advice? Like, how do I get in? How do I do this? I do that. And I'm always like, you know, I think beyond and before all of that, all of the how to get in, how to find a manager and all of that aside first, the most important thing is ask yourself a question. How passionate are you about this thing, first of all? Like, you know, someone was, I've read this somewhere, but it really resonated with me, which was, find something that you love doing so much that you would do it even if you never got a penny for it, and nobody was watching, and you never got praise and appreciation for it, right? Because I think it's a very hard thing to do, right? Because we live in a world where everything is, wait a minute, what do you mean if I don't get paid? I gotta get paid, right? But if you're talking about true success, that's succeeding right there, if you're able to do that. And not everybody's able to do that right away. It's a process, right? But imagine finding something, but here's the beauty. Imagine you find that thing and you work on it, you build that craft to the point where one day you do get paid for it. Then you're just, you know, and then life doesn't become perfect, but then, you know, like myself right now, that's one of the things that I'm most grateful for. Am I where I want to be? Like, am I aspiring for greater things? Do I want to be on the Billboard charts and winning Grammys? I ain't gonna lie, of course I do. However, I put it back into perspective and I'm like, well, what did I do these past 3 weeks, right? As my job. Man, I flew to Toronto for a concert. I went to Vancouver to shake hands and kiss babies. I went to, you know, Arizona and as a guest speaker. And, you know, the money isn't pouring in, but I'm able to provide for my family. And actually in this, I've also developed, this is interesting too. I never used to think about this. In the course of me kind of realizing how blessed I am as far as this being my profession, I've also developed a whole new respect and like a profound admiration for people with traditional 9-to-5s and you know, even the people that work at the Taco Bells and the Best Buys and the H&Ms, you know, because, you know, you ask someone like, is this your dream job? More than likely they won't say no. No one really says my dream job is to work the register at H&M for the next 10-15 years, right? Obviously, you know, they're trying to grow, maybe grow within that, right? But my thing is like, they do it because, you know, they have to and they want to, right? So my thing is, I really respect that. right? And I think we live in a culture where it's so easy to actually belittle that. You hear that someone works at retail or something, and right away you're just like, he ain't going nowhere, she ain't going nowhere, or something like that. When in reality, yo, those people kind of make the world go around, right? Can you imagine walking into Starbucks and there's no baristas and there's no one taking your order, and like the world would fall apart. So that's an interesting thing. Like, I have a newfound respect for just your day-to-day 9-to-5er. Yeah.
How did you learn how to do that in a battle?
Well, the cool thing about whenever anyone brings up Freestyle Fridays, especially at this point in my journey, is that it's mind-blowing to think that was over 10 years ago. It was 12 years ago specifically. So that was in 2002. And for lack of better words, that was like my big break, right? Appearing on there. That's how I ended up signing a record deal and whatnot. And even right now, you have people who might not be able to name one single Jin song, but they'll be like, oh yeah, I remember the Freestyle Friday, and they'll be actually be able to quote like some of the rhymes that I said in the midst of the battles. And to answer your question, I mean, I don't know if it was something I learned. I think it was something that definitely was a developed craft, right? So when I was doing Freestyle Friday, I was, early 20s, right? I think like 19 or 20 years old, roughly. But mind you, engaging in the freestyle battle element, I mean, I've been doing it, I think as far back, if I can remember specifically, probably 12 or 13 years old. It's different atmosphere, of course, right? It was just in the cafeteria, at the school parking lot or whatnot. But same premise, right? Same thing. This guy rhymes, I rhyme. And the goal ultimately is, yo, how can I outdo this guy in terms of like creative lyrics, in terms of being spontaneous, in terms of being witty. And by the time I did the Freestyle Friday, you know, I would like to think I did have a good kind of foundation for that platform and what that involves. So, you know, people, they definitely always give me like props and praise and recognition for what I did there. But now I look back and I'm like, man, I mean, I don't know. I feel like they definitely give me more credit than I deserve. I mean, I was just, because especially in the context of even within the Asian American community, they're like, yo, you was up there holding it down and representing for us. And I always tell them, I gotta be honest. I mean, I don't know if that was my intentions when I went up there. Actually, when I went up there, I think my intentions were a little more self-serving. It was like, nah, I'm here to, I mean, number one, I love this and I'm passionate about it. But there definitely wasn't a feeling of, yo, I'm gonna go up there and make all of us proud, right? And that's something I had to learn down the line too, is that even the notion that you want to carry the flag for everybody, that's not exactly the most practical thing. Because it's up to them if they want you to carry their flag or not, right? So the whole idea of like, yo, you're a pioneer, or you're this, or you're that, right? I've come to learn that it's something that they have to bestow upon you, as opposed to me saying, yeah, you know, I represent for all the Asians. No. I can't say that because I can't just assume that on my own. However, if certain individuals with the community want to say, yo, Jin, nah, he represented for us, then I mean, I take that humbly and I take it with major responsibility. Now, at least. Back then, I wouldn't think too much about it. But, I mean, I know I went on a tangent there, but just in regards to the freestyle battling thing, I definitely think people give me more credit and recognition than deserved. I mean, I was just doing what I love, right?
You're not like pumping yourself up right before.
Yeah, there's definitely like there's a mindset that you have to get into. I definitely find myself getting into these zones. I mean, I think one thing, if we were to go into a little bit of the intricacies of the freestyle battling thing and the mindset of someone who engages in that, I definitely think all the people who excel in it, they're definitely like sponges. Like their brains are sponges. Because the reality is, one of the best things you can have, right, in those moments where you're freestyle battling, other than just an expansive of vocabulary as possible, that's obviously the greatest foundation to have, right? Because it's just simple. The more words you have, the more directions you can go in with your rhymes, right? So, but beyond that, along with the vocabulary, I think it's just to have a mind that's just constantly soaking everything up.
You were the first Asian American rapper to sign a record deal with Rough Riders 10 years ago, and that seems pretty surprising now. Do you think a lot has changed in the music industry since then?
You know, I think the thing that caught me off guard when I first broke into the music industry was that I didn't realize how big of a factor my ethnicity would be. right? I mean, from as early as I was like 12, 13, getting into this hip hop thing, just as a hobby, right? Like rapping with my friends in school and the cafeteria, it was pointed out to me like, oh, you're like a Chinese kid, man. The Chinese kids don't rap, right? My friends would say that. Or even when I'm engaging in these like ciphers with these other kids, it would be pointed out. They'd be like, oh, you know, in their raps, like, oh, this Chinese kid thinks he's, you know, whatever, whatever. At that young age, I guess it just didn't really it didn't really stick with me that, hey, this is going to be something that you're going to be dealing with for years to come. And then even upon signing a record deal, right? I signed my first record deal when I was 21, and 21. From right out the gate, apparently this was going to be the topic like of choice. Every interview that I sat down with, every person I come across, at the core, the question is, so tell us, what does it feel like being the first Asian American rap artist or the first Chinese rapper or the, you know? And I think my misstep, or what I kind of handled, I could have handled in a better way at that point, was I fed into it, right? So rather than actually saying, hey, let's calm down with it, you know, with all of that, right? Because they were using that as a vehicle to pretty much like, you know, like hype it up as much as possibly can. They're like, Jin, there's like 9 billion Chinese people in the world. If only one of them out of every 5 buys your album, you're gonna be out of here. So rather than actually fact checking and saying, hey, slow down with that, I would be like, yeah, you're right. So yeah, I'm gonna be doing something phenomenal, or I am doing something phenomenal. And yeah, that only led to like disastrous outcomes, because the reality check was you know, very much when my album dropped, and it didn't do anywhere near what the expectations or the perceived outcome would be. And one thing led to another, and I think for me, looking back on my journey now, that was actually the best part. And it's weird because people are like, why would that be the best part? Because I mean, the beauty of reality checks is that it grounds you, it humbles you, and if you allow it to, those are the best chances to grow, right? Because if everything's just going smooth, I mean, I think that's when I was also the most lost, because everybody's just like, yeah, Jin, you're the man. Yo, we love you, Jin. Everyone, right? Yeah, you represent the Asians, all of that. But then the reality check, when you're not doing as well, it'll be the same one. Now I was like, yeah, man, he's representing us. Oh, man, he's making us look bad, right? And then it just lets you see, wow, who was really rooting for you, like, you know, genuinely, right? Or were they just rooting for you because, you know, it seemed like the cool thing to do? So even someone, for example, like Jeremy Lin, right? I totally look at him as a hero of mine because of, you know, you look at his story, right? Kind of making it into the league and then not really getting an opportunity to play. Then he comes to New York, gets benched, and Insanity, then gets traded. Like all of these ups and downs of it, obviously his perseverance is admirable. But just as far as the people that really root for him and support him, you know, his close friends, family, you know that they're with him because they're with him, as opposed to all of the exterior stuff that's going on. And I think for me, that was what was great about, you know, when I released my album 10 years ago, and for lack of better words, it flopped, right? That's the term, right? That's the terminology used when the album doesn't really live up to the expectation as far as sales. So I'm glad. And I only say this now after years of self-discovery and healing and being able to climb out of that. Because I got to be honest, the first year or two of that happening, it was tough. Like, I mean, because I'm human too. So it was definitely taking its toll on my spirit and on my heart. And I mean, there was a good season where I was just super discouraged and bitter and frustrated and falling apart as a man. And I know it sounds extreme, but I can only describe it the way it was.
Well, your new album is coming out and you turned to crowdfunding for this one. How did you decide to do that, and how has it worked out for you?
So with 1459, I think in many ways it was a project where we did want to explore new ways to approach it, whether it be the creative and in this case the launching of it. So when I first caught wind of this PledgeMusic platform, I was definitely interested and intrigued and excited because I heard that they were doing something very different. As it was described to me, they were like, yeah, it's kind of like Kickstarter but with a twist, because I was very familiar with Kickstarter, right? So Kickstarter is your most traditional, conventional crowdfunding type of platform. You know, our goal, $1 million. support, and if you support $100, you get this. You support $500, you get this. $1, you get this. But the point is support. So I understood the premise of that. But what was exciting to me about PledgeMusic was, I guess, two things. Number one, they are a platform that is very much artist and musician driven. So whereas Kickstarter is more broad, PledgeMusic is saying we're here for the musicians. And when I first, logged on, and looked at it, I was like, wow, this is a really cool site. So essentially, the biggest difference between PledgeMusic and Kickstarter, other than the music aspect, is that it's not so much of a crowdfunding. It's more of like a artist engagement site with the fans and the supporters of these bands and rappers or whatever. And what I mean by that is, so with 1459, we launched it several months ago. We launched it back in May, leading up to October, the release. And the whole idea was saying, hey, listen, traditionally, if I was releasing an album, I would go to the studio, record my album, release a single, and then we would just promote the heck out of it, right? Hey, October 21st, the album drops, buy it. PledgeMusic, what we did was, it's May right now, I'm releasing an album in October, I haven't started on anything on it, I want to welcome you to be a part of that process. So it's a very engagement driven platform. So what does that be a part of it means? That means if you make a pledge right now, right? So it's not even saying, hey, donate or make a contribution. It's making a pledge. Because they really are they put a lot of emphasis on that, making a pledge, because they want it to be something that it's not so much just, hey, give me your money and wait for the album. No, it's like, I'm pledging to be a part of this project. So what happens is, from the moment you make a pledge, whether it be in May, June, July, leading up to the album, you get to be a part of the creative process. And that ranges from everything to exclusive content, right? Footage of me in the studio, writing songs, recording songs, to when I have like a rough demo of one of the versions of the songs. As a pledger, you get to listen to it and give feedback and things of that nature. And ultimately, there is a way to like set a goal, and we set this goal, right, for, hopefully to reach it by the time the album releases. But we hit the goal I think we hit it around July. So 2 months into the launch, we hit the goal, and we're beyond that now. So we're at like 130% or something. And, and then after that, I started this campaign of, now we're hoping to hit 200. But either way, regardless, it was really cool to see that people were interested in such a way, with, and so enthusiastic about the album. And I'm excited. I'm very excited about this album, because people are like, well, what do you think, Jin? Is it your best album? And then the more I got asked that question, the more I started to ponder, like, is it my best album? And I wasn't able to come to a conclusion in regards to that, but I did come to another conclusion very definitively. I do feel it is my most authentic and sincere and artistically focused album, just in regards to the music and the message that I want to convey.
You started so young. Do you have any financial advice for upcoming artists, especially in terms of managing their money?
Okay, well, at 21, this may not be the most practical thing to do as far as financial advice, but, obviously it has to happen naturally. But to me, one of the best financial pieces of wisdom that I can give someone, as far as, especially for the gentlemen and for the fellas out there, find a nice, financially smart wife. Because for me, I think that's the wisest financial move I've made in recent years. And these, my lifetime so far at 32 was, and it's interesting, because obviously when I first met her, right, my wife, and we were dating, and even in the course of our relationship becoming more serious, it never dawned on me, or I never really thought, like, man, let me see what her financial skills are like, right? Let me let her keep tabs on my books and account and see how she does. Never. So it's just a blessing that the person I happen to fall in love with and is also the one that I'm building my family with right now, mother of my child, my soulmate, my partner until eternity, right? It just so happens that she is a financial... obviously, everyone has like their strengths and things that they're not strong at. But for her, she is the complete opposite of me in terms of financial management, in terms of being feasible, being practical, being logical, being wise. Because I can say that prior to meeting her, especially when I was, let me put it like this, when I was making the most money is when I was the most foolish. When in reality, that's when I should have been the wisest, right? So foolish, meaning man, spending it as fast as I make it, not really even thinking long term. I think that was the biggest thing. If I can offer a piece of advice to young people, whether you're in the entertainment field or not, aspiring rappers or not, is it's easy to not think long term, and I didn't think long term. So as I was making this money, right, signing my record deal, getting these shows, getting these gigs, there definitely could have been wiser investments made. And sometimes it's not, and when we think investments, it's not even just about like, oh, like actually like stocks and bonds and portfolios and stuff like that. But investments as in just being wiser with your money, right? But I guess everybody goes through it, right? When you're 16 and you have your little, you know, your paper delivery route, you know, you're also thinking, man, I'm just trying to make $100 so I can buy a pair of Jordans, right? So that was my mindset back then. And then at my early 20s, it was like, yo, I got 60 grand. Man, I'm about to get a car, some nice rims. And there's nothing wrong with the nice car and nice rims, but it's just very right there thinking, right? Whereas it could be like, okay, 60 grand, maybe I can buy a nice used car and start with some 17-inch rims instead of 20-inch and then work my way up. But nah, it's like, no, I'm getting the new car, I'm getting the 20-inch rims, I'm getting the crazy stereo, I'm getting this, right? Meanwhile, I'm still renting like an apartment, right? Or I'm renting a house and I'm paying off the owner's mortgage, when I could have been right now, 10 years later, I could be like, yeah, well, this is my house right here. Whereas now, here we are, and I'm still kind of aiming for those things. But I'm thankful, though. And just to touch back on the Hong Kong years, I think what happened in Hong Kong, along with the productivity, like both financially and just the personal growth, that was a big thing, too. There was definitely a mentality of, let's be wiser with the funds this time around. And thank God it was very fruitful those few years. So right now to be able to say, yeah, you know, am I, you know, MTV Cribs, you know, am I in MTV Cribs zone? Not exactly, but you know, my wife, my child, myself, we have a roof over our house, we have transportation, you know, 3 meals a day, we're all right, you know, and I mean, I'm just thankful for that.